want to learn how to brat ethically? Maybe you're a part of the community, but have no idea what a brat is. Or you might be a newbie kinkster and need some 101 tips. Then register at Brat University, your prime podcast for brat and kink education. Hurry, classes start soon.
Break a heart like an eggshell, cardiac arrest or heart attack. Throw a tantrum, baby doll me up cause I'm a brat. I'm a handful, devil pyromaniac. Bitch, I am one, throw a tantrum.
Hello everybody, welcome to Brat University. I'm your professor, Brattastic.
And I'm Havoc Rain.
Alright, and today's class is about the difference between a funishment and a punishment. So Havoc and I found some interesting... Oh wait, before we dive into that, I just want to say Tatiana is not feeling well, so she is not with us on this episode. We wish her to get well soon, and yeah, so I just wanted to address that and why Tatiana is not with us today.
Send some goats up her mountain.
Oh, I love that. I've never heard that, but I like it. We found some interesting definitions of a punishment when we went looking online. So I went to Urban Dictionary, not that, that's the best place to go look for definitions, but I just wanted to see what they had. And they said that a punishment is a pleasurable way of being punished. And I can't really say that definition is wrong. I cut off the end that they included. It says usually in a sexual way. And I'm like, it doesn't have to be. So I technically cut that part off, but I do agree with the first part that it's a pleasurable way of being punished. And then Havoc found one on Reddit that I thought was pretty funny. It said that punishment is where both partners are enjoying a scene, and then a punishment is where both partners feel that what is happening is deserved. And I feel like Havoc and I will definitely dive deeper into that definition later, but I agree with it. I'm here for it 100%. And then the definition for punishment, we just pulled, what's off Webster's dictionary, because we both felt like, no, that's definitely what a punishment is in or out of kink. Like, it definitely fits. It said that it was an infliction or imposition of a penalty as retribution for an offense. And when you're in a dynamic where you have rules or things set for you and you commit an offense, then there is an infliction or imposition of a penalty, and even in kink. So we were like, that is a good definition. So for you personally, Havoc, what is the difference between a punishment and a punishment? What's the difference?
For me, it's kind of a hard line because I am a masochist. And usually my partners are sadists, so it's usually a punishment always. But for me, punishments are definitely something that I enjoy and get a lot of happiness out of after it's done. And then with punishments, it really depends. So a lot of my punishments are exercise-based, and it forces me to get into shape. So, and it's something that I dislike or I have hard motivation for myself to do. So when I act out, like, that's kind of one of the things that I have to do. And it's frustrating as fuck because it sucks.
No, I understand. Well, it's supposed to. It's supposed to suck.
I know it sucks. And so, sometimes I'll be bratting and then I'll get hit with an actual punishment. And I'm like, fuck. And I get so angry at myself.
No, so you brought up something that I actually kind of want to go into. You said you'll do something where you're bratting and it'll lead to a punishment. Are certain things in your in a dynamic that, you've had ever been where you'll get punished and punished for the same thing? Or is there a clear line where, like, if I'm doing this, I'm looking for a punishment where, like, these are things that I will definitely get punished for?
Sometimes there's a clear line. But kind of like what the definition says, where it says punishment both partners feel is deserved. I also feel like it should be unenjoyable for both. So if you're going into it with a punishment knowing that this is something that your sub likes, then you're basically rewarding them for bad behavior, whatever that bad behavior is. I'm using air quotations because at the end of the day, it's not really awful behavior. It's just dynamic. And where as a punishment, you know, if I'm acting out and I'm going to be actually punished for it, but my dom enjoys giving that punishment, then he's being rewarded for my bad behavior. So there's like a line that you have to find out, like, I really don't want to do this to you, but I have to. And so then that's where it comes into the aftercare for both partners. So
that was something I actually had to talk to an old dom I had, where that's what he would do. I feel like he wanted me to brat just so he could punish me, and I'm like,
yes,
that's toxic as fuck, and that's not okay.
Yeah, it's manipulative kind of in a way. It's like, oh, you tricked me. You tricked me to make me do something to get myself in like deep shit, and now you're gonna have like so much fun doing it. You know, there's a difference between me egging it on, knowing what I'm going to get out of it, as opposed to not knowing. And I think that's kind of like where soft doms come in, because you don't know what they're going to do always. Mm-hmm. Where with hard doms, it's like, okay, they are routine. You know what they're going to do in a way. You know the limits of them.
100%. So for me, kind of the same thing. Definition between a punishment and a punishment is after a punishment, like, you know, I feel happy that what we just did was fun. Because I'm definitely someone who likes that playful back and forth, the power struggle, as it were. But if I'm being punished, unlike a punishment, I've had spur of the moment punishments. I've never had a spur of the moment punishment. It's always something that is very clearly stated to me, you did this and this is going to happen. And then even before it's administered, it's like, why am I doing this to you? Like, why are we doing this? And then it's administered. But like a punishment, like I've been bratting, and there was a moment like I was bratting it to my dom, and then next thing I know, he pulled me over his knee and was spanking me. And I'm like, but we both know it was for fun. It wasn't being serious. I was just pushing his buttons to get what I wanted. And, you know, so I don't feel like a punishment could ever be sprung on me, but punishments I'm okay with because it's something I like anyways. You know, who doesn't want something they like sprung on them? Yeah. And usually if it happens, I push for it to happen in the first place. So
yeah, and a lot of the times to be like correctly punished, I definitely have to be in the right mindset for it. Like, I have to be kind of prepared for my punishment. I can't just, you know, all of a sudden like, you need to go do this right now.
Yeah, no, same.
And sometimes like I was in a very toxic dynamic once, and like there was a lot of confusion between what was fun and what was not. And so like I would brat like I usually would, and that would usually result in a punishment, but instead like it would confuse me, because then I was being punished for something that I normally do. And I was just like, I don't understand. Like, what's the difference? And it was mostly just because he was an asshole, mm-hmm. and he just liked to hurt me. So I think that's also something that really needs to be considered before you dive into punishments at all, is what is acceptable bratting and what's not acceptable bratting, and what is to be rewarded and what's not.
Like, so for me, I'm a huge sass mouth, and so is my dom. And initially when we talked about things I wasn't allowed to brat for, that was one of them. But then I said, well, you get to be, you know, a smart aleck, but then I can't respond because it'll get me punished. That's not fair. And so we both agreed, okay, me sass mouthing is an acceptable form of bratting, and it won't get me in trouble. But anything where I'm outright like not going to do something he told me, like there was one day he told me to go get something to eat, you know, as doms do, because they want to take care of you. And I was like, I'm not hungry. I don't want to. And his thing was, you know, I didn't ask if you wanted to. And I know this sounds really toxic, but trust me, people, I think I'd eaten one meal in 2 days. So he was pushing for good reason, and he and I are married and live together, so I trust him. This is a very well established dynamic for anyone listening to this. So yeah, he pushed me, and that was not something I was allowed to brat about. Now, I did tell him no, but I wasn't being bratty. I literally was just like, I was depressed, and so I was like, I don't want to eat, like, I'm not hungry. And he's like, I know, I get that. And he's like, go, like, he got like a rotisserie chicken from Costco, and he was like, just go get some chicken, you don't have to eat like a whole bunch, just go get, so I got like a little bit off the breast and I ate that, and then I realized how hungry I fucking was.
I think also, I also think that like a huge thing within our community is that people think that you have to have punishments in a DS dynamic, and you 100% don't have to have that at all in order to have like a fully functioning DS relationship. Like, you don't have to have punishments. Like, the whole point of a dynamic is to build each other and work with each other and essentially complete each other by, yin and yang, essentially. And I think that's super important to know, is like, just because you're in a DS relationship does not mean that you have to have punishments or punishments.
For the most part, punishments and like, aren't a strict thing with me and my dom. I really wish you guys could see the video because he's standing right behind me. So I just think it's funny while I record these, like, he hears them. And it's not really something we do. Like, if I do something like really fucking terrible, it'll happen. Like, I think I forgot my meds for like 3 days. Yeah.
Oh,
me and my ADHD make me forget my meds because we haven't found a med for that actually works, which is why my doctor was talking to me about, it might not be that, you could just be on the spectrum. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's awesome. Anywho, totally different conversation. And I hadn't taken my meds for like 3 days, so I had a punishment where for each day I had to edge like in a row for each day that I had missed. And now, is that something that normally happens? Like, no, like if I miss a day, it's just take them now, blah. But like, considering how important it is for me to have a functioning life on my meds, he was like, we have to do something about it this time. And I wasn't even like mad about it, but we don't have that consistent, like, you need to drink, 2 bottles of water every day. You have to ask me before you go get we don't have rules like that.
Yeah.
So for our dynamic, we're like, rewards and punishments aren't necessarily a thing. Now, he'll reward me if like, he feels that like he wants to give me one, like, oh man, you did really good with this thing. But it's not something that's expected. We know it's something that is part of our dynamic, but not a huge one. And honestly, the funny thing is, once we actually took out rewards and punishments, our dynamic got better.
Yeah. When I was with my mentor, I know I talked about my mentor in a past podcast, but like I was talking to him about the punishments and stuff like that, and he was like, well, I want you to understand that the reason why dominants punish is not only because the submissive has disappointed their dominant, but because they have disappointed themselves. And a lot of submissives struggle with that because we don't want to disappoint our doms. We don't want to do that. And so that's why we don't really break the hard limit rules, when it comes to taking care of ourselves. It's not like we do it intentionally. Like you said, you forgot to take your meds. You don't do that intentionally. But if a dom is on the same wavelength as you, as they should be, they will notice that behavior right away and be like, look, you cannot be doing this, because not only does it hurt me to see you go through this, but you're hurting yourself, and that's not okay. And so I think that's where the actual punishments come into play, is when you're disappointing not only your dom, but yourself, because we are our worst critics after all, which is why in a lot of my previous dynamics, I've never been allowed to talk bad about myself ever. And when I do, it's like I have to do affirmations, and I hate doing affirmations because it makes me feel weird, because I don't believe what I'm writing down. But because of that, like, I have learned, like, okay, if I can't talk bad about myself, nobody else can. And so I implement that with my friends. Like, I don't want to hear this. I need you to say 5 nice things about yourself. So in a way, it's positive reinforcement. It's never to be a negative punishment. There's reasons behind it.
I shared a thing once, and I'd have to go look it up all over again, but the difference between like positive and negative reinforcement and then positive and negative punishment, like there's a whole thing in like psychology about it. And I agree. I feel like punishment is used as a corrective measure.
Yes.
And I don't want everyone thinking always like, like you said, your punishment was affirmations. A punishment does not have to be sexual. It doesn't even have to be masochistic. A huge thing that, brats always talk about is being made to write lines. I'm like, that's not sexual or masochistic. It's just inconvenient. I do too. It's inconvenient as fuck. Because I once did it, but like, I bratted my punishment and I just made it worse. So I had this many lines. So I typed them and then sent them. I didn't copy paste at least, but like I just typed it.
Then they made you handwrite them, huh?
Yeah, but I had to handwrite them and they doubled the amount. Yeah, I was like, damn it. But no, I think punishments are definitely used as a corrective measure. Like, hey, this thing happened and it needs to not happen again. Not because the dom was just like, oh, I don't like it and it doesn't need to happen again. There is a reason for the betterment of you. Yes. Why I'm doing this. Think of like how a parent would punish a kid. Like, I don't punish my stepdaughter because, I want something bad to happen to her for something she did. I'm like, I need you to understand the gravity of the situation and why we're not going to do this again. So there's a punishment.
Yeah, so it's like completing the punishment allows for the submissive not to dwell on the disappointment. So like, yes, you did wrong, and yes, you were punished, and no, you may not dwell on it anymore. So like, it's done. It's over with. We're moving on. I hear about it again, it's going to happen again.
Right. I was talking to you earlier about like even the different types of aftercare I might need from a punishment to a punishment. Like a punishment, the aftercare I might need is from just any typical scene. Like, my endorphins are high. I have a bad tendency to start to hyperventilate. And so a lot of it is just calming my body back down. So I stopped doing that. Whereas a punishment, there's a lot of building up of my self-esteem. Like, it's done now. I don't hate you. You're not a terrible person. Like, it's a lot of just reaffirming positivity in my direction. So I don't dig in, because like you said, disappointing someone is a huge deal for a lot of people. Like, I don't care if you're pissed off at me, but if someone told me they were disappointed in me,
it's over.
That's I'm
cry.
just like,
I will cry.
Yeah. And so to stop me from falling in that hole, that aftercare looks different. So, for me, the difference between a punishment and a punishment is entirely the mindset of what's happening when you go into it.
Yes. There was a checklist that I had found a couple years ago. I have to look up the book. It's called Discipline, Adding Rules and Discipline to Your BDSM Relationship by Lily Lloyd. And basically it kind of has little things that you can add to your contract to adjust minor things in case, there is an instance where a punishment is given and it triggers, a PTSD moment or, trauma that you've had before. And it'll show you how to like minorly adjust certain things to avoid that, because that's the last thing anybody wants to deal with, is having to, relive something that you're trying to get over.
Right.
As a punishment, because when I was a kid, I have a lot of childhood trauma, and unfortunately for me, mine has turned into my kinks, so it doesn't trigger me as much. But I know there are people who are triggered by writing lines. So because they were forced to do it as a child, they were forced to write lines, when
Yeah.
they were bad. And so, that'll have to be something that's negotiated prior, during vetting. And if it does end up triggering you later on, that's the whole point of open communication in your dynamic, is being able to vocalize like, hey, this is actually starting to bother me in not a good way, and I don't like it anymore. So is there a way that we can change it for something else?
I had that happen where it's corner time. So someone did it, but like they went in a different room. So I was left alone in the corner. And I was like, I can't have you do that. I can't have someone just like ignore me or leave me alone as a punishment, or like take, you yourself away from me as a punishment. Like then it was negotiated that comfort things, and this is not my current dom, but it was negotiated that things for comfort could not be taken away from me as a punishment. Like, so that included blankets or like stuffed animals. You could not take them as a punishment.
Yes.
And so now, like, if he did put me in the corner, like, he would be sitting there.
Yeah.
So I might be in a corner and he's sitting there playing a game. So like, I know he's in there and he's not just forgotten about me and left me. Like, my abandonment. Doesn't get triggered by that. My current dom didn't put me in the corner, but one of my punishments was holding pennies to the wall with the tips of my fingers and the tip of my nose. And like, he was near me, and like, because of that, like, it didn't trigger me. Like, as long as you're near and I can hear you, I'm okay with that. But like, leaving me by myself, like, that's not gonna be a thing.
That is such a good punishment. Like,
it really is.
I would be so mad. But that also plays into should a safe word be available during a punishment?
100%.
Yes, absolutely. And the safe word, guys, the safe word should not be manipulated to get out of a punishment. But absolutely, if there's a punishment and you are not in it 100%, or your dom is not into it, your dom absolutely has the go ahead to safe word you out of that punishment if he does not feel like it is appropriate at this moment in time. Because
I do love that you brought up that the dom can safe word out of a punishment and not just submissives.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like people misunderstand that only submissives can use a safe word. But if your dom is watching you and he sees in your face that something is wrong, he can 100% read his way out of there and be like, look, this is not okay. I can see it in your face. Because again, if you are receiving a punishment, we don't want to disappoint. We know what we've done wrong. And so we're willing to endure it. And that's where a lot of people, I feel like I especially have done it, and I have experienced severe sub drop afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
And so if your dom is in tune with you, like, and they can see that, 100% they can safe word. Because again, punishment is not to be enjoyed by submissive and dom. Like, it's something neither of you want to do. And so if your dominant is seeing that something's not going right, or he has that feeling that this should not be happening right now, he can 100% safe word and end the scene.
Okay, so I'm gonna say this, but I'm gonna say this with a preface. With me and my dom, we've been together now a couple years, and so a lot of the time, unless he and I don't use safe words, not that like we know it's there, and if I need to use it, it's there. He needs to, but like we've just become that in tune with each other that like he knows when like I'm done. And so there was one time he was giving out a punishment, and it was something that I shouldn't have done, and I was totally in the wrong for this, so don't do it. But he asked me if I was okay, and I wasn't, but I told him, yeah, I'm fine, because I'm like, I don't want to hit, I didn't want him to think I was weaseling out of it, or, not taking what was supposed to happen. But he knew, and he was like, no, we're done. And I was like, and he's like, nope, we're done. And he just cuddled me, and I started crying. And then like he told me like he knew, like it just wasn't right. It wasn't being corrected. It was hurting me. and like emotionally, and I should have stopped it. I should have said something. That was totally on me. And I accept that. But it was, you know, your dom can totally just be like, no. And, you know, and if a dom does let it go, please don't take advantage of that and think, oh, they're gonna let it go every time, or, you know, don't be a toxic submissive and try to emotionally manipulate your dom into letting you out of punishments repeatedly. That's not cool either.
And it's not fair, you know, to make them feel like the bad guy all the time. You know, it's already hard enough having to deal out punishments, and then to be make them feel even worse. It's just it's awful. And I also see that a lot in the TikTok community with bratting just cause, you know, it may not even be their dom, it's just them bratting on certain things. So like, I only brat with people I know, my friends, because they know. And with that, I can understand how far I can go. But if I can tell that they're not in the mood, like, I'm not going to take it there, you know,
right?
There's no reason for it. There's absolutely zero reason for it.
Oh, agreed. Like, there's maybe 2 to 3 people on TikTok that I will actually dom with. Like the real Jazza being one. Like, I will brat at him all the fucking time, but it's funny, and we have that rapport built up that he knows that I'm just being funny. Wolferty is another one. I love bratting at him. It's so funny. He's a soft dom, and it's freaking adorable, and it's really fun. But, you know, I don't do that to every dom I come across on TikTok because, you know, as we have talked about in a previous episode, that's not ethical. We don't do that.
No.
Because then if they turned around and wanted to issue out a punishment, you would say, no, I'm not your submissive. Well, then don't.
Exactly. Don't act like it.
Right.
Yeah. I can't stand that. It bothers me so much. Like, I see it on TikTok all the time, and it's such a toxic thing. Like, I love the kink community on there, but there's so much like newness coming in, and it's filtering onto TikTok with the newbies that they really have no idea what they're doing, and like, it does damage to our community. They don't understand that because people see them acting a fool in public forums, and they don't realize the damage that they're doing.
Yeah.
While we're sitting here trying to educate people and be like, no, we are not that. That's not how this is. It's not abusive. It's not dom frenzy, sub frenzy. It's not any of that. And I think that's another thing, is sub frenzy and dom frenzy runs rampant on that app.
That is something we should definitely talk about in a later episode. Not just about what it being on TikTok, but just about it in general.
Yeah.
That should be one of our Kink 101 topics, because trust me, when you hop into the lifestyle, sometimes you just get a going.
Yeah. You're like, let me see how many I can fucking Pokemon I can collect. Let's see how I can do this. And we're not Pokemon. Like, you can't go out there and be like, guess what? I'm your daddy now. And it's like, no. If you did that to anybody who's actually in the community, they would tell you to go fuck yourself. And I personally would chew you up and spit you out. Yeah. You could not, new doms, I don't think they could handle me. And I say that because I've been in the lifestyle for a long time. So I have made new doms cry. And they're like, yeah, I have no limits. I have no limits. And it's like, well, guess what? I'm that bitch that's going to test that I have no limits attitude that you got.
Right.
And they learn really quick. I am not the one. And I want them to understand that you met me. Do not treat anybody else like you tried to treat me, because I will put you in the ground so fast.
There was a dom that told me he had no limits. I was like, cool. I'm like, I have this really big strap on I've been wanting to use on somebody. And they're like, wait, what are you talking about? Like, you said you had no limits, so I assume you'd be down for this. And they're like, well, I don't want that. I'm like, so limits do exist. And like, so like, I come at them, and like, of course that conversation goes nowhere, but I also like try to flip it and let it be a teachable moment. Like, bruh, no.
Yeah, saying that you have no limits does not make you desirable. I'm gonna say that right now. It makes you look very uneducated. And I don't have time to play with people like that.
Now, you can say, I don't know what all of my limits are yet.
Yes. I'm willing to find my limits. I think that's sexy as fuck. Like,
I love
you-
that. Ooh,
ooh,
I'm gonna
ooh.
use that
I got
now.
goosebumps. I got goosebumps.
I'm
Ooh.
willing to find my limits. But on the subject of punishment versus punishment, are there any last thoughts that you had on that you think people should know? Either pointing out, important differences or anything about the punishment topic.
I think punishment is very popular and enjoyed by very many people. It's playful and it's fun. Just make sure that you can communicate and negotiate about the effects that the punishment has on you, so that way it still remains fun and it doesn't turn into a mental problem for you. Think about it deeply as a submissive and a dominant, how these punishments impact you in your mind. If you're not okay with it, please voice it out, because that's when it turns from fun to abuse without even knowing it.
100%. I love that. I love that so much. I agree. A lot of brats want to get that punishment, but I feel like we definitely got to think of what the doms on this side have to deal with, and maybe they can't handle that every day. Maybe they don't want to handle that every day. All of this, as we have said from the beginning, anything involving this needs to be negotiated. Your punishments. I want people to know that, like I said earlier, punishments don't have to be masochistic or sexual in nature at all. You don't have to have punishments if your dynamic does not want them. And punishments should be that. They should be fun.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, it looks like class is over for today. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Stick around for our next episode. We hope that the wonderful Tatiana can be with us on our next episode.
Yes, I missed her.
I did too. I really wish we could have got, some of her input on this. I'm sure we'll hear about it at some point. But thank you for joining us, and thank you for coming. Bye. Did you like what you heard? Then make sure to never miss a class. You can find us on one of your favorite podcatchers, which include Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Podbean, Spotify, and Good Pods. You can also find us on Twitter and TikTok at Brat University. Make sure to look in the show notes below to join our Discord server. We can't wait to hear from you.